It's November 12, 2020. I'm Todd Dunn, and today I'm back aboard my 1936 wooden powerboat Tortuga to do the next step of my deck repair. And what I'm hoping to do today is finish putting in the overhead planking and then glue down a layer of marine plywood on top of that to build thickness to back where it needs to be. So let's get started. And here's the area I'm going to be working in again. And when we put the first piece of planking stock on, I will be doing that from off the boat. And I'm also going to be working from off the boat on a stepladder beside the boat to do the trimming of that epoxy I put in yesterday that needs to be cut down. So I'm going to go down there and get to work. Okay, first step is going to be to trim back this epoxy over here, which is just a little bit high. I use the oscillating saw to do that. Pretty good. And a little more out here. A little in here too. Okay, I think we're okay to take my piece of wood now and fit it. And I'm just going to take a pencil and mark it underneath where I want to cut it. Right there. And now I will put my cut line on there. And I will now go and cut this off. And then we'll come up and install it. Okay, just have to drill my holes out there. Other end about here. Okay, so that one is ready to go down, and we will put it on. Do that, and like that. Forward a little. Okay, that should do it. A couple of screws. See if I can't tap this in just a little bit more on this end. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Put this first screw in. Damaged that one. Get another one out. Okay, that's pretty much done. Now I just have to fit a piece of wood here out to the outer edge of the hull. I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to do that. I'll have to fit a piece of TNG and see if I've got one that's long enough. I don't think I do have a long enough piece left. And so what I think I'm going to do is just take the tongue off this with the oscillating saw and butt a piece of 3/4 inch planking stock up against it just to fill the gap. So we'll cut this tongue off. Now I can go with Okay, that tongue is off. Now I just have to get a piece of planking stock and cut it to the appropriate dimensions. Let's see how big it needs to be. It needs to be 1.5, and up here 1.5, a little bit there that still needs to come off. Yep, 1.5 by 17. So I'm going to go down and cut a piece of wood to fit right here. And see how we're going to do. Okay, what I decided to do is take some wood that I have that is not quite long enough, and we'll take it here and we'll install it this way in 2 pieces. It doesn't really matter because there's going to be plywood epoxied onto the surface here. So this joint right here will be completely covered up. And on the edge of the hull, there'll be a trim strip that'll be sealed over that as well. So that shouldn't be a potential leak. I just have to do a little bit more of a trim on this and then we'll have it. While I'm at it, I've got a little epoxy out here that could stand to be cleaned up. So I'll do that while I'm here. Painting to do there, but that isn't that critical since that will be covered by my trim strip. So we'll take this and we'll put a hole right here. That one will go just fine. Screws in. And I think I have just enough screws to finish this. Now that's a smaller one that somehow got in that box. Ah. Left. a small one and just trust the epoxy to do the bonding. That one's on, and I'm going to go take a fraction of an inch off this with the skill saw. Be easier than planing it off or anything else. And then we will put this one on. I'll drill it before I go. Pretty good there. Now we will go trim this down and then install it. Okay, pretty good right there. Okay, now what I need to do is make sure this back edge is flush with where I'd like it to be. So I'm going to use this piece of this as a straight edge. And we'll run across here like this and mark it to cut. You know, what I'm going to do is just use the oscillating saw to make these cuts. Now that I've finished putting all the wood down, what I've done is made up a cardboard template of this area right there. And I use this template to cut out a piece of marine plywood. And you can see there are a whole bunch of screws in it. And the screws are there to clamp it down while I'm gluing it. So what I'm going to do now is glue it down. And I have mixed up a batch of West Systems epoxy. And what I'm going to do is paint both mating surfaces on the boat here and on the back side of this piece of plywood with unthickened epoxy, just to let the epoxy, any epoxy that's going to soak in, do that. And then I will thicken up the epoxy with West System 403 microfibers and coat this surface with the thickened epoxy. And we will glue the plywood down. And after that, what will remain is to fiberglass it and fair the fiberglass. And once the fiberglass is all faired out, paint it and put new non-skid down. Now, I don't know if I'll get that done this fall because I'm running up against weather. I've got about 3 days before our nighttime temperatures go back down below freezing on a regular basis. Bits of wood that are sticking out here. Now we'll paint this guy with unthickened epoxy. And this goes fairly quickly. I'm just putting a coat on here mostly so it will soak in, so that the epoxy with the thickener in it will not create an epoxy starved joint. Now here we go, just about done. And then we'll add some thickener to this epoxy. I think I may have to go mix up a little bit more, but we'll find out. And spread the thickened epoxy and be ready to go. So that can be set aside. I'm just going to move some things so I don't get epoxy all over everything. Put this guy here and start thickening this epoxy. So I'll be back in a second after I thicken it up. It's a little tight in here, but so here's my thickened epoxy, the first batch. I may need more. We'll see. Take this off there. And start spreading it. And the idea here is simply to bond the plywood to this planking so that I don't have a channel for water to wick underneath the plywood. I am definitely going to need a little bit more. Yeah, I think I had about half what I'm going to need. So I will go make up another batch. Fortunately, it's relatively cool today, so I have plenty of working time. Especially once I've spread it out on the wood, which is itself relatively cool. So that was 6 pumps. So I think what I'm going to do is make up at least another 6, maybe 8. Okay. Okay. I'm back with a big batch of epoxy, and we'll just slather it on here and start spreading it out. Plenty on the edges. Now this piece of plywood comes all the way out to the edge of the deck. So that even if water runs off, it can't get in to the edge of the plywood. because it'll be off the edge of the deck before that can happen. And it cannot get in between the plywood and the underlying material. Also, epoxying the plywood to this overhead planking really stiffens this planking up and makes it a very, very sturdy composite. And I'm probably going to put one layer of 1708 fiberglass fabric over the top. At least that's what I think I'm going to end up with. Which will make the surface very waterproof. That'll be set in epoxy as well. Okay, I've just about got it. A little bit more here. Now we pretty much have it done. I'm going to slather a little bit into here. On the underside of that. And as I'll put all of it in here. That is about it. So at this point, I'm going to fit the plywood into there. Slide it in like this. And I've got a hammer up here to tap it in with. As I said earlier, these screws are my clamping mechanism. I have to change glasses so I can see what I'm doing a little better. And I've got 46 of them in here. I'm just going to screw into the material on the other side. I broke that bit, so I have to get a new one and put it in. They always wrap these things so that you cannot tear them open without some sort of nuclear device. There we go. Okay, let's start here in the middle and work out. Now what I'm going to do is once the epoxy here kicks, I will back all these screws out and fill the holes that are left with thickened epoxy. And I'll do that before I put the fiberglass cloth on, obviously. There we go, she's all clamped down. I'll just clean up the squeeze out here. And all all this excess will disappear when I grind a bevel into the top surface of the existing fiberglass and a little bit into the plywood to give me some depth for the new fiberglass. That is now glassed. And what remains to be done is, hopefully tomorrow, I think it's supposed to be warm enough tonight, this epoxy will cure. I will come and I will back out all these screws. I'll sand this surface a bit and grind bevels around the perimeter of the boundary between the plywood and the old fiberglass. And I will then fill the holes where the screws were with thickened epoxy and wet out the surface and put a layer of fiberglass cloth down and leave it to cure. And I think the weather is going to be such I probably won't accomplish much more than that. This fall I might be able to get a coat of fairing compound on. So anyway, that's that. The repair is now closed up. Inside the boat, if you look up, you'll see nice white, freshly painted overhead. And up here we have a layer of marine plywood bonded to that overhead with epoxy. And once I get these screws backed out and fill all those holes and get a layer of fiberglass cloth on there, this deck repair will be fully waterproof. And I'll be ready to start painting once I get it all faired out, which will take a little while, but it's not a big problem. I do apologize for the lack of light in here. It's quite dark out today. It's overcast and there's not a lot of light in here, but that's the way it is. So if you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and click the notification bell to find out when the next video in this and any other series I'm putting together is ready for you to watch. Okay, I'll just let this whole thing here cure out, and we will take everything that I'm taking home. Thanks for watching.